I was really coming into my own as a leader and finally getting out of my own way, doing my own work. And the pandemic hit. And so being in the Family Entertainment Center, we went 1 month from millions of dollars in revenue that month to literally zero the next.
Welcome to the Legacy Branding Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Beauparlant, here to guide you through the journey of selling your business and building a personal brand that leaves a lasting impact. On the show, we'll explore real-life founder stories, expert insights, and actionable strategies to help you navigate the transition, avoid post-sale crisis, and create your impact-driven legacy brand. Whether you're thinking of selling, building to sell, or already on the other side, this podcast is your go-to resource for making your next evolution your best one yet. Let's dive in. Today, I'm excited to welcome my amazing client and somebody that I'm so happy to call a friend, Ron Hill, to the Legacy Branding Podcast. As the co-founder of Conscious Leaders Quest and former founder of Redemption Plus, Ron has dedicated his career to guiding heart-based leaders and organizations through transformational journeys. He describes himself as a purpose Sherpa, helping leaders uncover their true potential. With over 25 years of experience in building purpose-driven companies, Ron now helps leaders adventure within, harness collective wisdom, and lead businesses that the world truly needs. Through Conscious Leaders Quest, he challenges leaders to grow holistically, mind, body, and business, unlocking their full potential for impact and success. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Thank you, Laura. It is so exciting to be here. The journey that we have had has been very exciting, and I feel like very rich, and I've learned so much. And that intro was amazing. It sounded really good. I don't normally really sit and listen to that.
It's both beautiful and sometimes uncomfortable when somebody else talks about your accomplishments and the amazing things that you've done in your life. So sometimes just sitting and listening is exactly what you need to do.
Yeah, well, I feel that I often deflect, and I think most people respond that way. And I've learned that when we deflect, that it doesn't honor the person that is appreciating you. So I've been practicing, just genuinely listening and saying thank you. So thank you, Laura.
You are very welcome. Now, Ron, you and I have never met in person, and I'm so excited we're actually going to get to meet in person next year. I just, on the weekend, met another client who I'd never met. We worked together about 1.5 years ago, and we finally met in person, and it was such a gift. So I have to say, I'm very much looking forward to giving you a big hug in person next year, because we've worked together, and yet it's amazing how connected, I will speak for myself, that I feel to you and the mission that you have with your business and just who you are, Ron. You are just an amazing human.
Thank you. It feels exactly the same on this end. It feels like we've known each other for a really, really long time. So when you say we've never met in person, I'm like,
I know.
We've never met in person. But we haven't. And for some reason, we're going to potentially go to the other side of the world to meet each other.
I know. That's true. We're going to meet.
It could be simpler, but let's make it complicated.
Yeah. We are entrepreneurs. Sometimes we do like to complicate our lives a little bit, right? Yeah.
Oh, I love to do the complicated thing. Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, Ron, we've worked together. We helped you with the branding for Conscious Leaders Quest, but I actually want to start and go back to what led you to sell your business, Redemption Plus, and how did that decision to sell the business align with you personally, with you in your personal life and in your professional evolution?
There's so much to that question. And let me start at this place. I founded and I led Redemption Plus for 25 years. We were a purpose-driven business, but it took me an evolution to get there. I had a vocabulary when I started Redemption Plus that I wanted to live a different life than I'd been able to live working for other companies. And if I wanted something different, I assumed other people might want something different. And during that journey, I had mentors that told me, you can't really do those things. When you're really profitable and you make a lot of money, then you can actually basically be nice and be kind and help.
You have to wait.
And you have to wait, right? You got to fire some people. You got to create some fear and all of these kind of, I don't know, things that I would hear them, but they didn't work. And so ultimately I found purpose and the idea on how we build a company around purpose. And then I found conscious capitalism. And then we really used the 4 tenets of conscious capitalism to build out Redemption Plus. But it wasn't until I went on my own leadership journey and was able to get out of my way that ultimately we were able to really lean into the idea of a purpose-driven company that's able to do good and be wildly profitable. And so getting back to your question about selling the company, and I'm telling you all that because I had thought about selling the company, but what I struggled with was finding somebody that was also purpose driven, and enriching lives through insights that empower became the purpose of Redemption Plus. We sold toys and prizes mostly from China. It was more complicated than that. We had a design. We were really a leader in design. We helped the customer experience. We really understood through really living and understanding what our customers needed, not what they were asking for. We learned that they really needed help with process. They needed to connect with the customer, because very often if you went into a family entertainment center and you played skee ball, video, like whatever games that you played, and you got tickets at one point, lately you get debit cards, you get a prize card. But the last experience that you have in one of our customers was typically mom or dad at the counter, and the kids are trying to make a decision and the parents are ready to go, and it can be very frustrating. And so we learned how to use the paradox of choice to give choice, but not too much choice, and actually help that customer experience. So I say all that because thinking about who would take my baby, basically, that I raised, and it was so very special, and nobody would be worthy of that. And then in 2020, we had just finished our best year ever. I had the best leadership team. I was really coming into my own as a leader and finally getting out of my own way, doing my own work. And the pandemic hit. And so being in the family entertainment center, we went 1 month from millions of dollars in revenue that month to literally zero the next. So when I sold Redemption Plus, it wasn't the way that I thought I was going to sell it. We basically, I needed a buyer because we needed money to be able to make it what really ended up being about 6 to 8 months with our entire industry shut down. And, at one point we felt we were certainly able to withstand that. Cutting some of our income is one thing, but having a large distribution facility, 65 employees, all of the things that we did, you can't sustain that without the revenue. So I needed a partner. I needed to find an option. And so somebody connected me with a potential buyer, and it just seemed to make the most sense at that time. Week before the pandemic, I was sitting with a group with Conscious Capitalism. A woman by the name of Nilima Bhatt, who co-wrote a book, Shakti Leadership, was in town for an event. And we had dinner, and Nilima said to me, you know you've outgrown your business, right? And I was thinking, no, I didn't know this. And then in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, I could really never extricate myself from this. I'm entrenched in every piece of this business. These people are my family. This building is, and we built, we designed this building, and it just felt like my second home. But it's interesting how I believe that the universe works for you. And so what ultimately happened is that this event, the pandemic, came in and created an opportunity to sell where I wouldn't have normally sold. And it freed me up to really lean into the next version of my purpose. So that was a really, really long answer for that question. But hopefully that gives a little bit of detail around the sale. You can tell it was not easy. Like there was really a moment where I might think, I'll just go down with the ship before I sell the company to somebody that might not be purpose driven. I mean, that's how passionate I was about purpose over profits.
And I think there'll be a lot of founders listening to this that will resonate with what you've said. Like maybe they've been in a similar position, or they are thinking of selling and they're like, who could run my baby better than me, or being entrenched in everything. And there's so many things about what you shared. So I think the details are important, because it's not just glossing over it and saying, yeah, it was easy and we did this and that. It was a difficult decision. It came at a difficult time. It wasn't how you wanted it to be. And yet you still did it and move forward into the next evolution of who you are.
Yeah. And it's interesting, at one time where that felt all encompassing, and my wife was amazing through that, because I was not at my best. And then to come out the other side of it and like, oh, like this is supposed to happen. And I actually had, like, there was doors opening going into the pandemic that I didn't understand that those doors that were opening was an introduction to what ultimately would become my future, and that would become much more aligned with me. I gave a talk at the Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit in fall of 2009, and it was about what's really complicated about leading a purpose-driven business. And my talk was, what do you do when you've completely aligned your company around purpose and you make such an impact in everybody's lives and all of your stakeholders' lives, but then you realize that what you actually sell is not conscious, and you're actually selling plastics that are made in China that potentially harms the people that are making them, and they go on a boat and then they go on a train and then they end up in a landfill. And I had just so it was this idea on how do we move this company beyond that? And it's just interesting how sometimes, given space, the answers come in ways that you don't understand that they're going to be your next. It's really going to be your next big thing.
And it's hard to know that. In a talk that I have, I talk about being able to connect the dots backwards, right? You can't always see the decision you make today and where it's going to lead you, but you can look at your life today, who you are today, the business you've built now, and connect that directly back to making the decision to sell your business. But
Absolutely.
you had to make the decision.
Yeah, right. It's so clear at this point. And it's interesting because I'll listen to other podcasts, I'll hear entrepreneur stories, and there's like all these things that feel like they don't link together, and you could hear somebody say, well, I was working in a coffee shop, I was doing these odd jobs, my parents weren't excited about that, but like this one thing led me to meet this. Like, you just don't know how everything links together. Even like the oddest of experiences that you might have are really setting you up, or they're linking to help you become ultimately, I think, what we're supposed to be.
I think it's also being open to listening, because I think a lot of times we do shut the door before it's even open, because we don't even realize that it's an opportunity being presented to us. And sometimes it's just listening to those clues until they go from the light tap to the sledgehammer. And often it's the sledgehammer that is the thing that people finally start to listen to, and it forces a change of direction in their life. But if they had listened to the little tap, tap, tap months or maybe even years earlier, it would have been different. Doesn't mean that the direction's going to change. Maybe you end up in the same place, but maybe it takes a lot longer and a lot more pain to get you there.
Absolutely. Well, when we think about the hero's journey, I think that we always resist the adventure before we go on the adventure. But I also think that we have the ability to cultivate our own skills with our inner work to be able to listen. We have so much wisdom and knowledge inside of us. But if we don't cultivate that, then very often we don't hear those opportunities on the first couple knocks. Sometimes it's a lot of knocks. And then, like you said, it's the sledgehammer, or when I hate to say this because maybe my son will be listening to this. When my boys was in high school, they referred to him as the 2x4 kid. Like, he needed to be hit over the head a couple times before we learned the lesson, but eventually. and I look around and I actually find that he probably got that from me. And there's a number of people, in fact, that sometimes, we don't want to pay attention until we absolutely have to.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. So you've sold Redemption Plus, the pandemic is happening, and then you created Conscious Leaders Quest. And I know you have business partners. And can you tell me a little bit about and share with people listening a bit about that journey, how you got to the creation of it, how you came together, and what it is? Absolutely.
So there was a little bit of a space in between Redemption Plus and Conscious Leaders Quest. And I borrowed this we were actually going to change the name of my company, Redemption Plus, at one time to Intrepid Journey. And so then I felt this calling that wasn't really, and it was never right for that company, but it was really potentially my next iteration. And this idea on Intrepid being a mashup and it being bold and courageous. So it was really kind of about my bold and courageous journey. And so what I really stepped into was this idea of helping companies around purpose. How do we unearth purpose within an organization? So really creating clarity of purpose, mission, vision, values, even down to behaviors. And then how do we weave that through the organizations. And very quickly, I learned that if the leader of a company doesn't do their own work, and what I would say go through the eye of the needle, then ultimately, whatever you put in place as far as purpose, mission, vision, values, it potentially can fall apart. There's a weakness if the leader isn't living. It's not the leader saying what they want to happen and having somebody else execute it. It's them literally living and embodying what the impact is of that company. And so I found that there was a disconnect, and I'd always believed in conscious leadership. We ran a conscious leadership cohort through Conscious Capitalism Kansas City. And so I was sitting in Nosara, Costa Rica over the holidays one year. And I thought, you know what? I believe in leaders. I want to lean into conscious leadership work. And I'm at a point in my life where I want to do the work in adventurous places where I want to be. So I came back. That was December. I came back the beginning of January. I'm part of this amazing group called Exchange Approach. And so I came back to an exchange event. We were kicking off and setting intentions for the year. And I just said this out loud. I want to have a conscious leadership retreat in Costa Rica. I'm going to do it in the next year. And I didn't exactly know how it was going to come together, but I basically put it out there. And pretty quickly, I got a call from somebody that said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this. And we had a conversation, and we weren't 100% aligned with it. And then she said, well, Michael Dietrich Chastain, he told me he's interested. And so slowly, Michael showed up, and we were so aligned and felt like we had been business partners forever, even before we jumped into doing this together. And then Peter Katz, our other partner, showed up because we wanted him to be involved in some way. And he said, and both of these guys said, well, like, I want to be completely involved. Like, I want to be, like all of the hard parts. And I think about the beginning to where we are now. And ultimately, there's a lot of hard parts in there. But so that's how that all came together. So eventually, we created Conscious Leaders Quest, and we ran a retreat in Nosara, Costa Rica, April of 2023. It was so impactful on us and the leaders that went through that we ended up building a community. And so then we built out this path. And then ultimately, a year later, we came in and we did an impact study so that it wasn't just how impactful was this week, but how have we been able to help you transform your own life and your business based upon Conscious Leaders Quest. Because we believe that if we help leaders do their inner work and they find their own path and their own voice and their own purpose, that these leaders that want to be the best versions of themselves, that they are going to create the companies that are creating psychological safety. They can impact people's lives because they can bring their whole selves to work. And then ultimately, they're going to be solving the problems of the world and not necessarily creating them.
That's beautiful. You can hear the passion in your voice when you talk about it. You have so much clarity and so much love for the work that you do. And it is so important. I think it is the time for conscious leadership. Absolutely.
It is the most important work we can do. And it's interesting. I'm in the middle of a 3-day with Exchange. It's a 3-day sales boot camp. And so the first day, I'm like, oh, this is all the work that I do. It's basically, right, how do we do our own inner work? How do we regulate the energy that's going on inside of us so that we attract those other people? And I'm like, it's really the solution for everything. Because when we show up as a higher vibration of ourselves, then it literally we can walk in a room without saying anything. And it either creates scarcity or abundance. So I think it doesn't matter whether you're running a leadership retreat, you're a branding expert, whatever you're doing. I believe the work of helping to show up as a better version of yourself can literally change the world. So that's why I'm so passionate.
I love it. And it feels like that's a big part of the legacy that you are creating for yourself through this business and through every aspect of your life.
One day at a time, yes.
So what does legacy? Yeah.
Working on it.
Aren't we all? What does legacy mean to you?
So I heard somebody ask this question like literally in the last month, and they said, legacy doesn't mean anything to me because I'm just trying to do the best work today and the legacy will take care of itself. And I love that. So I think about legacy, it really is, how do I show up as the best version of myself? And in my own experience with this, and when I really leaned in and I answered the call and I became a better version and I started to heal from trauma and I became lighter and I just learned how to navigate the world differently. The relationship with my wife changed. The relationship with my teen boys changed, and I created this space for them to heal. And then ultimately, I attracted a different leadership team. And like things that had been, we started out talking about doing things the hard way, which I've always, it's been a default for me. But then when I've learned how to show up with more ease in the world, then things become easier just because energetically I start attracting things that become easier.
I think that idea of the legacy kind of taking care of itself, I think that only works if you have a clear purpose. If you are unclear of what your purpose is or what the meaning is in your life, it'd be really hard to stay on a path that will create that purpose, which becomes the legacy.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've done exercises with my team where, you know, you think about your eulogy and you think about at the end, like, what do you want people to remember? And it really comes down to how do we make people feel? How did we impact other people's lives? And so I think sometimes the simplest way is just simply being kind and trying to give more than we're taking in the world.
Absolutely. So what advice would you give to a leader who's feeling the pressure to evolve or keep up to pace of today's world and business environment, and how could they embrace conscious leadership?
Well, I think the most important thing that each of us can do is to do our own inner work and try to help us match on the inside what we want to exude on the outside. And, you know, you meet people and they look put together, but like, we don't really know what's happening. And we tend to make up stories, but we don't know what's happening. But for most of us, there's a playback tape that goes on, and either maybe we're not talking that kindly to ourselves, or maybe we're doubting ourselves, or maybe we feel a bit of an imposter syndrome. And like all those things are totally normal, but I believe that we have to do inner work. And when I say that, it could be meditation, it could be working out, it could be walking in nature, heart, mouth, conscious leaders quest. There's so many things. It's not one thing, but it's really what is the daily work that you're going to be able to do. And for me, I just started a course to become certified as a breathwork coach. So I'm doing a daily breathwork on top of my meditation, and it changes everything about my day. But those little things, whether it's 5 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day, they all add up. So basically, at a time when the shit hits the fan, like when there's a pandemic or something happens that you don't expect, you've got the ability to be able to show up with equanimity. This idea that, right, we can see what happens, but we're not necessarily emotionally drawn into it. So I think that would be my advice for any entrepreneur and trying to figure things out. If we can connect with ourselves in a deep way, then we can connect with others. But it really takes work, and we can choose to put, these little pieces in every day, or we're going to have to put work in that's more complicated down the road. I feel like if we don't. And it could just be with our own health and how we show up, or we have employee turnover, things that we don't understand.
I do love this idea of you doing these things today for that time when the shit does hit the fan. And so you're prepared. It's like you're able to handle things better. It's kind of like insurance. Like you have it, and even if you don't need it, you have it. So if you do that daily practice of meditation or breath work, and you might feel like, I don't really need it today, but the reality is maybe it's not as much for today, although it is, but it's actually helping prepare you for those moments when things do go sideways and you actually need to be able to come at it from that place of being mindful and grounded and clear and calm as you approach something really challenging.
Absolutely. We have this saying, pause, notice, choose, that comes from a friend and mentor, the late Dr. Danny Friedland. But it's just this idea on, can we be mindful enough to have a pause? And ultimately, we make better choices when we can pause and we're no longer reacting. We're no longer, sometimes I feel like we might be somebody else's puppet, right? Somebody comes in and throws something into our space. And when we bite on that, then they're basically pulling our strings. But when we've done enough work so that we can disconnect from that just enough, even if it's visceral, to go, oh, wait, I realize what's happening somatically inside my body. I can pause and I can choose to deal with it later, or I can just, whatever that next choice is going to be, it's going to be better than if we're literally energetically drawn into what's happening around us.
I love that. And I know at Conscious Leaders Quest, you have a philosophy around mind, body, and business. And I feel like what you were just talking about is all of that, right? It leads to that business that the world needs now, but it starts with doing that inner work with your mind and your body so that you can show up in the world in the way that reaches your full potential.
Absolutely. Yeah. With the work that the three of us have done, the only way I really know to show up in your full expression as a leader is this idea of mind, body, and business. So it's not just about something that's woo-woo. I mean, there's science, there's data around being more mindful. We were just talking about that. And then body is just somatically understanding how things feel, because that's also going to be very connected to how coherent you are with your team, right? Your ability to be able to connect to them. And so when we can start to understand where we start to feel stuff in our body, then ultimately we can combine that with the business tools to unlock inner wisdom, unlock collective wisdom. And that when we show up in those ways, then we can create psychological safety within organizations, which to me is a healing elixir that if every company did that, that in itself would change the world.
Amazing. You are doing such amazing work in the world, Ron. So how can people find out about your leadership adventures? Can you share a little bit about when they are, where they are? Let people know how they can find out more and maybe have a conversation with you to see if they're the right fit.
Absolutely. Would love to talk to anybody that is interested in going on this journey, whether that's now or, a long time from now. You can Google Conscious Leaders Quest and you're probably going to get all of our stuff. But the website is CL Quest, and you can click on the Start Your Journey form and fill that out. All of my information is on there. We're on Instagram. I think it's Conscious Leaders Quest as well. You can find me on LinkedIn. The next leadership adventure is back in Nosara, Costa Rica. It is February 16th through the 22nd of 2025. And so that event is filling up. It's not completely full yet. And so we have a ambitious goal to have it full by the end of October so that we can completely work on experience and design and like all of the amazing things that we help to take people through with our 4 pillars and the mind, body, business experience.
Amazing. And we'll make sure to have all of those links that you just mentioned in the show notes so people can just click and connect with you directly. Thank you so much, Ron, for sharing your insights and your stories. I feel like I've actually learned a lot of new things as well about you today, and always a pleasure to connect with you. Thanks again.
I appreciate the work that you do. Without having the brand that speaks about your purpose, I find it's harder to do this work. And I feel so proud and so comfortable of our brand every time I put something out there. And I think about the journey that we went through to really articulate who we are in the world. And so I appreciate you and the work that you do and the way you help businesses really be able to lean into the impact that they want to bring to the world.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to circle back to the very beginning where you said you're just going to acknowledge what somebody is saying and say thank you. Thank you so much, Ron, for being here, for being such an amazing client to work with. I'm so thrilled to see what you do with Conscious Leaders Quest for many, many years to come.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the Legacy Branding Podcast. I hope today's episode has inspired and empowered you on your journey to building a brand that truly matters. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other founders who you think would benefit from listening. And if you're ready to take the next step in building your legacy brand, visit our website, labcreative.ca, to learn more and book a call. Don't forget to join us next time for more conversations that will help you navigate your transition and create your legacy. Until then, I'm Laura Beauparlant.